Hello, I'm State Representative Dave Greenspan from the 16th House District. Welcome to Ohio in Focus.
Hello and welcome to this edition of Ohio in Focus, a program that brings state government to you. I'm Brad Miller, and I'm pleased to be joined today by State Representative Dave Greenspan, who serves the 16th House District, which includes the cities of Bay Village, Fairview Park, North Olmsted, Rocky River, and Westlake. Representative, welcome to the show.
Great, I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Great to have you. So you were recently elected to the Ohio House of Representatives, so congratulations on that.
Thank you.
But you are not a rookie when it comes to public service as a whole. Can you kind of talk about your background and how it led up to this point?
Sure. I've got a unique set of skills in the fact that not only have I served at the county level in Cuyahoga County, where I served on the inaugural county council there, but also back in Georgia in 2005, I was elected to the first new city in the state of Georgia in nearly 50 years, a city of 100,000 people. And it actually took a lot of effort. It was a 35-year struggle for the city to have the right to become a city. I was on the organizing committee for the last year or so to help get the referendum through the legislature. We then went to the residents. It passed 93-7 to become a city, and I was fortunate to be elected to serve on that inaugural city council. So I bring to Columbus a set of experiences in forming not only a city, as I did in Georgia in 2005, but was involved in founding the inaugural county council and county government in Cuyahoga County in 2011. So not only have I served at the municipal level and understand those challenges, and actually the city that I served on would be considered in Ohio, although we didn't have that designation in Georgia, as an urban first ring community. I understand the challenges facing not only our urban core, but our first ring communities. And the cities that I represent now have urban first ring communities as well as traditional suburban communities, not only at the state, but as I did at the county level. So it's a unique set of skills that I bring insofar as understanding the municipal and county operations and issues that face our state and face our neighborhoods.
So piggybacking off of that, how did all of that experience, and you've spent a lot of time in local government, certainly in both of those capacities, and most recently in Cuyahoga County, how do those skills and those experiences translate to here at the State House with the issues you're dealing with on a statewide level?
Right. Well, it's important to understand, and I've always been of the belief that life is about experience, exposure, and relationships, right? So what have you experienced and what have you been exposed to helps develop and helps you grow as you move through your career. Having been experienced and been exposed to issues at the municipal level, there are a lot of challenges that I've seen, both as a city representative, but also representing those at the county level, that are helping me navigate through some of the opportunities we have here at the state. I would also say the last 2 years of my county council term, which I served 6, I was on the County Commissioners Association of Ohio Board of Directors. So as in Cuyahoga County, we don't have very many rural areas, as an example. Agriculture isn't necessarily one of the thriving industries that we deal with. However, being exposed to those county commissioners and understanding and listening to the challenges that they face with a more rural community or deal with more rural communities has really provided me with a broader sense of experience and understanding as to what it takes to really understand the challenges and opportunities facing our state.
So one of the first announcements that's always made at the beginning of each legislative term, our members are appointed to various committees. One such committee you were appointed to, you were appointed as vice chair of the Transportation and Public Safety Committee. Can you talk about your role in that committee?
Sure. Well, I was honored to as a freshman to be named as vice chair of a committee, let alone public safety, transportation public safety. In Cuyahoga County, as an example, I served as vice chair for 6 years of the public safety committee there. So I believe it was a natural transition for me to serve in the same capacity. Also back in Georgia, once again, drawing on experiences, we didn't have committees, but we all had areas of interest. And one of the areas of interest that I took in Sandy Springs was in public safety as well. Once again, bringing up a city from literally ground zero, from start. I was involved in the founding of both the police and fire department, from hiring our first police chief and fire chief all the way through to the implementation of running the police and fire departments operations in a successful manner. And at Cuyahoga County, with some of the challenges we have with public safety there, I believe the transition was a natural transition for me to serve in this role, and I'm really looking forward to it. The transportation component, obviously, I served in Cuyahoga County for 2 years on our Public Works Committee, so I understand the roles and responsibilities, once again, opportunities and challenges that transportation has not only in a county but in our state. And we've got some phenomenal infrastructure and some great opportunities here. We have some challenges in that we need to really work on improving our infrastructure so that we can continue to meet the needs of the 21st century. But once again, experience and exposure, and having worked both in committees in my past, both in public safety and in transportation, I believe will serve me well to represent the residents of the state of Ohio.
And the House just recently passed the transportation budget, or at least its version of it. We won't get to that today. That didn't go through this particular committee,
Right.
but certainly a big combination of highways and small rural roads still really do present some challenges, I'm sure. And maybe we'll have you on again sometime,
Sure.
and we can talk about that. So that's not the only committee you serve on. Can you talk about some of your other committee assignments?
Sure, I serve on Economic Development, Commerce, and Labor. We've been very active and have had quite a few pieces of legislation early on within our first 60 days or so of this new General Assembly. I also serve on Government Accountability and Oversight and Community and Family Advancement. We've had quite a bit of interesting subjects flow through Community and Family Advancement. And it's great to serve on these committees because, once again, it's a broad scope of various statewide operations that suits me well, in the sense that I didn't come specifically with an agenda or with a specific interest. My interest is helping the state as a whole in all of its various aspects. And serving on these committees, whether it's transportation, government accountability, economic development, commerce, or labor, and community and family advancement, clearly shows a broad scope of understanding of the challenges and opportunities facing our state.
So you've really hit the ground running as a first-term legislator here. We'll get to a couple of pieces of legislation that you have already sponsored. We'll start with House Bill 38, the Public Safety and Military Protection Act.
Right.
Can you talk about both what that legislation does and also what the inspiration was behind
Sure.
it?
Well, let me start with the inspiration first. So Pete Elliott, who's a U.S. Marshal from Northern Ohio, was at a conference in Washington, D.C. a few years ago. And he mentioned this was kind of at the height in which we were seeing attacks against first responders, and we were starting to see some issues with members of the military, whether it's Fort Hood or Chattanooga, Tennessee, and so forth. And he made the statement, hey, listen, you know what, we're seeing these enhanced crimes against these folks, and you know, I wish there was an opportunity to have further penalties for those who have premeditated attacks. Well, I wrote it down in my book that was literally almost 2 years ago, in the expectation or hope that I would be representing the 16th district here at the State House. And we came up with the bill and we crafted it. What we did was, and what the bill really focuses on, is taking current state law, which provides for that if a state law enforcement officer is purposefully and willfully sought out and attacked, either in an aggravated murder environment, an attempted murder, or a felonious assault, that there shall be certain provisions that shall apply, certain penalties. What we've done is we've expanded not only to just include law enforcement officers, but other first responders, firefighters, EMTs, others trained in first response. We've included federal law enforcement officers, and we've also included members of the military. And the reason that's important and more relevant, here in December in Youngstown, there were 3 firemen returning from a fire, and their fire engine was fired upon, and one of the firemen was actually shot in the leg. The other 2 narrowly missed being shot. And it demonstrates further that we have a growing issue in our nation, in whereby whether it's a lack of respect or whatever the issue is in going after our first responders needs to be addressed. This bill basically says if you commit an aggravated attempt, a premeditated attempt against a first responder, and it results in a murder, then the law that currently is in place for law enforcement officers of life in prison, no parole, death penalty eligible, shall apply to you. It further goes on to include those members, those folks who previously served in that capacity. So if you're a police officer, and right now this doesn't apply, but this bill will correct that and address that, and you put someone in jail and you retire 20 years later and that person gets out and they seek you out to harm you, this bill will then protect you as if you were currently still serving. Same thing applies with federal law enforcement officers and members of the military. What I found interesting is, as we started researching some of the prevalency of attacks against military members, as an example, if you just do a simple Google search, attacks against members of the military, it's much more prevalent than people think. And it's unfortunate because these are people that have took an oath to protect our liberties and freedoms, not only here but abroad. And the same thing with our first responders. You know, the phrase I always use is they see us at our worst and our greatest times of need, and it's an opportunity to demonstrate to us as members of the legislature and residents of the state of Ohio that we stand behind you and we will not tolerate anyone who purposefully attacks you. And if they do, we will be able to provide sufficient penalty so that those individuals will not come back and harm us. Because remember, if they're willing to perpetrate an act against a first responder or a member of the military, then none of us are safe. And that's really the impetus for this bill, and that's really what this bill intends to do.
So there are, as you mentioned, a lot of real-world examples, which is obviously sad and unfortunate. It's going through the legislative process now, so obviously things can change and there's a lot of input. But what has the feedback and response that you've gotten thus far been like?
Well, generally the feedback's been phenomenal. As a matter of fact, the national media attention has really been focused on what we're trying to do here. AP ran with the story, a print story, and it's run through not only additional print outlets, but also through TV stations and local news stations all across the country, from Seattle, Washington, to Southern California, to Texas, Florida. The response has been really strong. Clearly, it's a topical issue. You're right, it's unfortunate that we have to focus on protecting these individuals where you would believe the natural respect for somebody who's here to protect and serve us would be there, but unfortunately it's not. So the response has been really strong. The feedback has been very strong, obviously, from the law enforcement and firefighter and EMT communities. The military and veterans interest groups have really shown strong support for this, as we would imagine they would.
Do you think people maybe don't understand how prevalent it is? So just getting the word out there of how often this does happen is the first step, probably?
I do, and the national media and even local media are really taking an approach to really demonstrating, at least on the law enforcement, and now a little bit more, unfortunately, on the firefighter and EMT side, the prevalence of these attacks. As sad commentary, Cleveland EMTs now wear bulletproof vests. Well, why do they wear bulletproof vests? Because there's a perceived issue out there that they very well may be under attack. The one thing that really goes underreported are the attacks on military and veterans. And you know, it could be a veteran sitting wearing a veteran's hat and somebody comes up and just assaults him because he wore a veteran's hat. Well, it doesn't get reported in the media. And oftentimes these veterans don't report it to local law enforcement to file a report. But it happens more frequently than we want to have happen, and clearly more frequent than we believe.
We have a few minutes left. I want to get to one more bill that you've sponsored, House Bill 40, which would create a state government expenditure database,
Right.
Basically enhancing transparency. Can you talk about that bill?
Sure. Well, I want to thank Representative Deaver out of the Cincinnati area. He's really leading the charge on this and was fortunate that he offered me the opportunity to joint sponsor this bill. This bill basically is an enhancement of the Ohio checkbook, which currently is offered through the Treasurer's Office, the State Treasurer's Office. But it's discretionary right now, the way that the project has been rolled out. There are over 1,000 political subdivisions throughout the state that have taken advantage of providing transparency in government by having their financial records openly available to examination through this checkbook process, this checkbook website. What this bill does basically is takes all the partisan, all the discretion, anything out of the fact that we believe in Ohio that transparency is the correct way to run and manage government. This bill will provide the opportunity to demonstrate and make mandatory to the Treasurer's Office, no matter who's in office, that the residents of Ohio believe that transparency is important, and we want, as citizens and as watchdogs of taxpayer dollars, as we all should be, the ability to see what our local governments are spending our taxpayer dollars on. This makes it law. This makes it as a shall function, not a may function, of the treasurer, that the treasurer shall provide this Ohio checkbook on an ongoing basis, regardless of who's in office.
Right, and that's where that permanence becomes so important.
It becomes a duty of the treasurer.
Correct. And with that, we are about out of time. At the end of each program, we have you talk to your constituents back home and how they can best reach you here in Columbus.
Sure. Well, great. Well, I appreciate the opportunity to be here. Obviously, we have an active office and are engaged in outreach and communications with our constituents, but we want that communication coming back to us. My phone number in Columbus is 614-466-0961, and my email address is rep16@ohiohouse.gov. please feel free to reach out at any time if you have any issues that I can be of assistance.
And that information is also at the bottom of the screen. Representative, we're out of time, but
Thank
really
you.
appreciate you coming on the show.
Great, thank you.
And we look forward to seeing you again on the next edition of Ohio in Focus, a program that brings state government to you. Thanks for watching.